Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here. I am joining you on, October 8th, 2024. I do live in Tampa, Florida, so we are gearing up here for Hurricane Milton. No, I'm not in a flood zone, but we are still all boarded up, all shuttered in, and ready to go. Should be fine, but I'll keep you posted on socials and otherwise if you are truly concerned, which I appreciate, but we'll be alright. We've got plenty of food, plenty of water, and all that, but not here for all that right now, of course. You are here for kind of a little run through of the deck I used at my store championships. I played at one this past Sunday, and I happened to win it, so that was pretty fortunate. I didn't have too much rhyme or reason as to why I decided to play the deck you're seeing here, Pridelands Aggro. We'll go through some of the card choices here in a minute. Do excuse the cat, he's in my lap right now. He's hanging out. He might be purring into the microphone, but it's okay. He likes to hang out with us. But yeah, I essentially had 6 decks built in my backpack and rolled a die and was like, I'll have some fun, play this deck here today. So I'm going to go through the deck card by card and kind of some choices I made there with specific numbers, what I may change going forward in the future, and yeah, what you can expect to play and how it expects to play against. I will say I did get relatively fortunate as far as some of the matchups there. As far as how the games played out in the matchups, I don't think I ran into very many favorable matchups, to be honest. I think I ran into some poor ones. Green steel being the worst, I would say. A lot of steel decks can kind of overrun this. You're playing functionally a mirror match in steel, but you don't have any removal, and they do. So it can be hard to kind of keep up. But a quick rundown here. Store championships, I have match records up here. OTP is on the play. OTD is on the draw. Certainly able to win going second in this deck. It's not really too much of a concern. I think I flip-flopped the top 8, how it's supposed to be put out there. But played against a lot of Emerald Steel. Not to say it's a great matchup. I did manage to beat it 3 out of the 4 times, but the game records kind of evened out. I think I was maybe 50-50 against it. Just happened to do well, and it kind of mattered there. Let me see here. So there are, it looks like 7 wins, 6 losses. So it's close. It's a very close matchup. Play versus draw doesn't matter too much, though it can in certain situations, of course. That's really how I think the game plays out, where play versus draw doesn't always dictate how the game's going to go, but it can have an influence on how you can play certain cards and how some of your decks may function. But I played against a lot of other decks too. I didn't play against the one deck I was kind of hoping to play against with this specific version of Amber Steel, which is Ruby Sapphire. I think this deck's a lot better against Ruby Sapphire than Steel Song is, traditionally, just because it can get much more aggressive and kind of get underneath of their sweeper effects, and can be pretty hard for them to deal with at certain points if you get the right combination of things going. So didn't play against any of that, so maybe I should have just played regular Steel Song and didn't just as well, because I think traditional Steel Song has a better matchup into Emerald Steel than this deck would. But hey, worked out. So I got my Mirabelle promo, which is somewhere over here, right here, nice and shiny. And I have my playmat in front of me, which I couldn't figure out quite how to toggle between playmats. So not going to do that, but it's a champion mat. I happened to play against someone in the last round who we both were kind of tired, wanted to go home. They didn't care about which mat they got. So I was like, I'll just take the champion one because my wife will like the champion one. So they didn't mind. They kind of wanted the one without it anyway, I believe. So great opponent. They were playing Amber Steel in the finals, traditional Steel Song. I think they're playing a little bit of a unique version with Nala, actually, which is kind of cool. But regardless of all that, let's get right into the deck specifics right now. I have that lined up, and my buddy's going to leave me. All right, bye, Sage. I have 2 cats, one Sage, one Rosie, both great cats. But moving right along here. So let's start with the obvious. We have a whole new world. Amber Steel, one of the best cards in their kind of arsenal is a whole new world. We don't have any aerials. We don't have any Singer 5s in our deck. We have no Naveen's, but still good enough to play a whole new world. We have a lot of things that can make us play it early, and it's one of our best cards if we have Pridelands going, which no one really needs explanation with Whole New World, but let's get right into some of the meat and potatoes of the deck itself. Pridelands. So Pridelands is a location, uninkable 2-cost location. There are, I believe, 16 uninkable cards in the deck, which is a little high for my overall taste for certain decks, but this one's pretty fine. You got a lot of filtration, and some of your ones just kind of draw cards anyway. So Simba. We finally got a shiftable Simba. It is not the greatest, but it is still shiftable. The Simba, son of Mufasa, 3/5 that ships for 4. And when you play, you can blow up a location or an item. Can be relevant in certain situations. Dealing with a lot of problematic locations like Queen's Castle did come up. Was able to destroy one of those. But realistically, one of this deck's dream draws involves playing 1-cost Simba on turn 1. On turn 2, playing Pridelands. Then turn 3, attaching the Pridelands to Simba. And then playing a bunch of characters out and kind of going from there. We have, of course, Simba Bodyguard, since, again, these are our only Prince and or Kings in the deck. We could play, of this color pair, one of the more common ones that sees play sometimes is Benja. Benja is a King, the one that destroys items, I should say. So there are multiple Benjas, but that one is widely played, I think, in some of the variations of this deck. Not really where I wanted to go with this. I wanted a bit more low to the ground, and I don't mind playing more Simbas, but all the Simbas here are great. Bodyguard at protecting some of your more aggressive starts, which we can get to how that works out. And the big Simba there can certainly come up. I definitely played it for 6 multiple times in the tournament. Blowing up Queen's Castle, I think I just played it as a 3-5 one time just because it was a reasonable stats to play into a board my opponent had against Green Steel. They didn't have many big bodies in play. That deck's not known for playing their large characters. But yeah, what Pridelands helps you do is play a bunch of your characters out for free or even reduce cost, and giving them extra health certainly goes a long way of protecting them from some of the steel songs that get played in this format. Storm Rage On, Strength of the Raging Fire, Grab Your Swords, all that it can help protect. It does gain passive lore that's blocked there by the little number 4, but it does have 1 lore to it, so it does gain lore every turn. Pretty good into cards like Be Prepared or Sisu, just to make sure that you don't get all of your ability to gain lore removed all at once. But let's move right along to the next bit here. And speaking of, again, shift lines, we have our shift lines. We have essentially full shift lines, 3 full shift lines in this deck. Simba being one you saw before, Kita and Kita, Stitch and Stitch. Who doesn't love Stitch Rockstar? I still have my promo Stitch here somewhere on my desk, and I wish I had more because I could play with them. But yeah, one of the cool things with Pridelands and what it does let you do is that play a bunch of your 1-cost characters, which there are 16 of in this deck, for 0. Meaning that you can just keep playing them for free and drawing a card off them with Stitch, Rockstar out, and keep going as far as you can go until you get to a point where you want to stop, or until you have enough lore in play just to win the game the following turn. There's a full bit of combo that lets you kind of win out of nowhere at times if you can get that fully going, but not highlighted right here. We'll get to in a minute. Kita is one of the more aggressive shift lines. It does not aggressive as far as combat, but aggressive as far as lore gain, because what it does let you do is kind of quest with all of your characters, play the shift Kita, and then protect everything by shrinking your opponent's characters by 3 strength until your next turn. It does walk into the large Sisu, the 8-cost Sisu, pretty poorly. It makes everything you have vulnerable to it because it's shrinking it. That is something to be concerned about when you're playing against blue-red. Maybe it's a better card just to play at certain points when you don't have a large board, just to get it down if you want to. But it is a risk worth taking because I think it helps a lot against a lot of the aggressive decks that are out there. So this is our shift line status. I love playing with Stitch, my favorite character in all of Disney. Glad I got to do it this weekend, and it was a ton of fun playing with this specific combination of cards. I mean, shifting into a 3-lore quester is nothing to scoff at, and being able to kind of combo and go off with it is where I want to be. So big fan of Stitch, loved it in the deck. I wouldn't change the numbers on any of these things here. Moving along to the next bit here, we have the more aggressive characters in the deck. One of the reasons, again, I played this deck was to help beat up on suspected Ruby Sapphire players. And having the complement of 4 Daisy, 4 Piglet, and 4 Smee. While there's not too much synergy in all these cards, other than Piglet is a hero, which we'll get to in a minute, and also being a captain for keeping Smee alive. They're just very high lore, cheap characters. The Smee and Daisy Duck have incredible stat lines, and a 2-cost 3-lore character in the form of Piglet is nothing to scoff at. Can help threaten a lot of game states and be kind of a lightning rod for protecting certain other cards you may have where they feel threatened by the 3 lore. You need to take it out. Huge fan of this combination of cards. Daisy Duck is pretty good. Again, I'm actually not a fan of keeping it too often in my opening hand. I really like to be able to draw it into the mid to late game depending on the matchup, especially in steel decks when they've kind of gotten their songs out of the way. It is something you can play on turn 1 into a Cinderella 1-cost, which kind of gets you a little bit of foot in the door. 4 health will kind of go into one of the big reasons that's great next here, but this aggressive suite is kind of one of the main reasons to play this deck. You get to play all these cards with the shift lines and being able to play a ton of threats for free or a ton of threats for near 0 or 1 cost. Making Piglet and Smee cost 1 is incredible with Pridelands, and it just keeps on going. A lot of pressure you can put out there and kind of hard to come back from depending on the deck, especially since myself included have moved away from cards like Grab Your Sword in traditional Steel Song. Really hard to get rid of a large board all at once. So maybe worth going, maybe forcing Steel Songs to go back to a more traditional Grab Your Swords build, but they were amazing for me all weekend. I really enjoyed playing Mr. Smee, Piglets, and Daisy Ducks, just getting out there as fast as I could. But we're moving along here to the next little show here, and these are the last little slide I have here for us. It's more of the utility cards. These aren't cards that are crucial to the strategy, although Doc, you could argue maybe when you don't have a card like Whole New World. But these are the ones that are kind of in the deck to be tech choices. That I think are really important right now. Pete is really, really good at cementing an advantage. Like I said, there are a lot of situations where your opponent being a deck maybe with more actions in their deck, songs and be prepared and stuff like that, just being able to put them off of a turn after you develop your giant board for near zero ink, then it's a really good way just to put a bunch of defense in play and protect against any kind of songs coming out. Really good into an Ursula turn where you're just making sure that they can't kill too many of your characters early, or helping kind of fight back in that way. Dock, I think this is one of the best Dock decks. It empties your hand really quickly, and I often do keep many cards in this deck. I don't mulligan too much because of Whole New World. Whole New World's not actually a key player in the deck. It is really important, but it does require you to have kind of certain things go right, namely Kita, because your other shift lines cost 4. Whole New World is not the best option to always have in your opening hand. That Dock really is a card you can plan your game plan around, and having Dock in the deck just really makes it smooth, where you get to keep going and keep questing and playing things out and discarding your hand, drawing cards, and setting up for after they kind of use a bunch of removal on your characters, and move forward. Dock is one of the reasons I think this deck is playable. The new cards from this set, I believe, are just the Simba Shift, the bigger one, Pete, and Dock. All done an amazing job at boosting this deck to, I think, a place where it could be playable. I don't know how great this would be in best of 2 format. Again, I think a lot of the decks that are not ridiculously linear or aren't struggling to win going second against steel decks are kind of pushed out of a lot of 2-game formats. This deck can certainly win going second against steel decks, and I did over the weekend. It's just a lot of the games were really close, and it can go either way. So having a card there that kind of helps you keep generating an advantage and keep the ball rolling with Dock is really nice. So the last 2 cards here, Rapunzel, Gifted with Healing, and Philatides, they're kind of flex slots. I'm not sure what exactly to do with them. Phil is one of the cards in this deck to help you really, again, late game cross the finish line, because there does become a point where Ruby Sapphire can actually close the door if they're managed to keep up with you early, to where you can't gain lore through any of your questing anymore. But it just so happens a lot of our 1-cost characters, the Simba 1, the Simba 2, the Piglet, the Stitch 1, and Kita 1, all those are heroes. So all those kind of fitting into your deck where late game you can Whole New World, and then even if you don't deploy anything that turn or aren't too threatening, if you're on, say, 17-ish lore, you can then play Phil and then a couple 1-cost characters out to then make sure that you can cross that finish line and get the necessary lore. It does have a secondary effect there. I guess it does read first, but it is secondary in my mind. Your hero characters gain Challenger 1. If you ever need to challenge into something a little bit bigger, it makes your Stitches and Kitas challenge up a bit better, but hasn't come up too much. Usually I'd rather be questing, I would say. The other card is Rapunzel, Gifted with Healing. I think it's one of the cards I'd want to add maybe a 3rd copy of to the deck. I'm not certain exactly what to remove. Maybe 1 copy of Phil. Phil wasn't as good. Again, maybe it was biased because I didn't play against any Ruby Sapphire decks. And Rapunzel was really good against Steel, so that's probably where my bias is coming from. But let's flash back to Las Vegas, where I played against 4 or 5 Ruby Sapphire decks with my Amber Steel deck. I'd much rather have had Phil in my deck than Rapunzel, so it definitely is matchup dependent there. I'm not sure which one I'd want specifically, and I don't really know what I would cut to the deck to make room for an additional copy of either if I didn't want to remove one or the other. So I may just leave it as is into an expected metagame of a bunch of Ruby Sapphire still. Maybe shift those numbers if you're expecting more Green Steel and Amber Steel. Go to 3 Rapunzel and 2 Phils, but I do like the rest of the numbers on the deck. It is something I was pretty happy to have all weekend. And yeah, this deck was kind of a monster. It really just deployed a huge board and was sometimes impossible for my opponents to come back from. I did beat several copies of Tinkerbell, Grab Your Swords, things like that. My opponent at one point in time had a handful of cards because I had played Whole New World into their Diablo that was exerted, because oddly enough, you can never touch a Diablo in this deck, so it's kind of hard to get rid of unless they want to challenge it to your things and trade it off, which doesn't happen too often. They usually have enough songs to keep going. So if I were to adjust a bit more for that type of matchup, there is one of the 7 Dwarves, which has it's a 2-1-for-1 that lets you challenge into evasives. I can't quite remember the name. I guess a Jafar could fit into the deck, the ones that challenge evasives, but I'm not too concerned with those types of cards. I think I would actually err towards the cheaper one, the 2-1, even though Hidden Cove can protect it. If you were worried about Diablo more than anything else, find room for that somehow. But overall, I was very happy with the deck. I enjoyed playing it a lot. The Emerald Steel matchup can be tough. It is, very much how the draws line up. I did play against a lot of turn 2 Diablos, I will say. I think the out of the 4 times I played against Emerald Steel, how many games did I play? I played 6, and I played 12 games. I think probably out of the 12 games, I think 10 of them my opponents had turn 2 Diablo, and I did beat that sometimes actually. So it was definitely something you can fight through, because you don't really care too much about giving them a bunch of cards. It really depends on how many songs they hit at the right time. And yeah, I loved the deck. I had a ton of fun playing it. going forward, again, I'm not certain if I would keep the numbers of Rapunzel and Phil the same. I liked all the shift lines. I think I want at least 3 Simbas because it can be pretty good if you're fighting kind of a more mid-range fight later in the game against Ruby Amethyst, which is still present throughout the metagame. Being able to blow up Queen's Castles after Be Prepared is pretty great. And yeah, the rest of the deck kind of hums and sings and does its thing. But no, wouldn't change too much. Kind of liked it. Wanted to see where the rest of set championships kind of flush out, see what other decks get played over the next few weeks, as well as in Seattle, to see if it's worth exploring further as we come close to set 6 in about a month's time. We have a little bit more than a month, but yeah, that's where I'm at. That's what I played, and I had a ton of fun playing it. And if you want to try something different and bust out those Stitch Rock Stars, which you may not have since set 1 or 2, give it a try. See how you like it. But thanks everyone for tuning in. I will see you all next time, and wish me luck. Gonna prepare for this storm. But till then.